if you can hear music and singing and belting, my housemate is singing. So, but I need to film this today, otherwise it's not going to get filmed. So we're just going to go with it. Yay! Hello everyone and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we are going to be doing a review of Shrek the Musical because it's on Netflix, so I could watch it. And yeah, that's what we're doing. Also, as you've probably guessed, Shrek the Musical is going to be the show of the week, so I will link to the cast recording below if you want to listen to that, or you can just go on Netflix and watch it. If you want to. But maybe you want to decide whether it's worth watching or not, in which case keep watching because that's what this review is for. If you've seen my Death Note the Musical review, which is doing surprisingly well, I was not expecting so many people to be interested in that video, so thank you so much. If you haven't seen it, I guess I'll link to it, because I'm a good YouTuber. But if you've seen that video, in this review I'm going to be following a similar format, hopefully shorter though. So I'm going to start off giving a very brief overview of the history of the musical and the film it's based on. Then I'm going to be going into my non-spoiler review and thoughts, and then finally I'll be going into more of a deep dive analysis with spoilers about kind of my final thoughts of everything. I'll also put timestamps in the description, so if you want to skip to a particular point you can. But yeah, let's crack on with the review, guys. Woo! Again, I've got notes. If I look down, it's because I'm reading things that I've written. So, what is my hair doing? Shrek the Musical is based, unsurprisingly, on the 2001 film Shrek. If you don't know what Shrek is a film about an ogre who goes on a whirlwind adventure. It's kind of flipping the whole fairy tale story trope. It's great. Love it. It's also on Netflix. Watch it if you like. The original animated film was directed by Andrew Adamson with a screenplay by a bunch of people. Fun fact, the film is actually based on a novel called Shrek! By William Steig, which I didn't know. I just thought it was plucked out of the ether. And the original voice talent for the film was as follows. So Shrek was voiced by Mike Myers, Fiona was voiced by Cameron Diaz, Donkey by Eddie Murphy, and Lord Farquaad by John Lithgow. After the success of the film, as you are probably aware, it got made into a bunch of sequels. I've only seen Shreks 1 and 2. I've seen bits of 3, and I've heard that 3 is like the worst one. I've heard that 4 is quite good, haven't seen it, can't say. And I believe there's a Shrek 5, or there's going to be a Shrek 5 or something. Does Shrek 5 exist? Let me know in the comments. I've kind of lost track of what's happening in the world of Shrek, in the Shrek cinematic universe. So yeah, so that's the history of Shrek. Then it was made into a musical, which premiered on Broadway in 2008, but actually began development in 2002, so not long after the film was released. And the musical had books and lyrics by David Lindsay Abaire. I think that's how you pronounce the second half of his surname. Music by Janine Tazori, and original stage direction by Jason Moore. And in the original Broadway production, which was different to the developmental productions, but this is the cast that opened on Broadway and also the cast of the filmed version, which is on Netflix. Shrek was played by Brian Darcy James, Fiona by Sutton Foster, Donkey by Daniel Breaker, and Lord Farquaad by Christopher Sieber. Editing me with some more information. So in 2009, Jeffrey Katzenberg, who was the co-founder of DreamWorks Animations, said that a recording of the show had been made for a potential DVD release. This DVD release was delayed because of the US National Tour and the West End productions, but it was finally released first in 2013 via Amazon, and then in 2014 as a DVD, Blu-ray and digital release, as well as on the streaming service Netflix. This performance is an edit of several live performances, as well as of a performance shot without an audience. I didn't have this information before this video, so it probably answers a few of the questions I had re the editing, which we'll get into later, but yeah, now you know. Bye-bye. So yeah, so that's a brief history of the musical and just Shrek in general. So let's get into non-spoiler review. Kind of overall impression, it was a lot better than I thought it was going to be honest. I knew about this musical when it was first around. I think I first heard about it in kind of the early 2010s while I was at university. I knew some of the songs and they sounded fine, but I thought it was going to be like, this is a carbon copy of the film, and I've seen the film, so why do I need to see the musical? But it is really enjoyable. It was really fun. And I think the reason it gets away with it is because it doesn't take itself seriously, but you can tell that a lot of hard work and a lot of craft has gone into what makes up this musical. Also, even though this musical is clearly for family audiences, there are a lot of fart and burp jokes. It's Shrek, obviously. It doesn't just stay at that level. The book and the lyrics at many points are very, very witty and very, very clever. So as an adult, I could really, really enjoy this musical. So yeah. In terms of the design, there's nothing that was really groundbreaking or unexpected. They basically recreated the film on stage. So unlike with The Lion King, where visually it's a very different experience, visually Shrek the Musical isn't like, wow, they did something so different to what I was expecting. However, what they did was executed really, really well for the most part. Really stunning, really, really well designed. The music was really, really catchy. I've had several of the songs in my head, including songs that I didn't know from before, I might just add. So it's not just, oh, I knew the songs and because I've watched it recently they're in my head. No, even songs that I didn't know were in the musical are very, very catchy. The geese agree. And I think on the whole, the songs are very, very well crafted. They are specific. If you've seen my Death Note the musical review, you'll know that that's something I'm apparently a stickler for. There are a mix of genres, but they all kind of make sense together. Again, I'll get into that in more detail later on in the video, but yeah, I really enjoyed the music. I thought it was great. Performances! Performances on the whole were very, very strong. Sutton Foster is a joy. I just need to put that in the universe. I loved Sutton Foster in this. I wish Fiona was a bigger part in the musical, to be honest, because I loved her. She was such a great blend of comedy but also truth and sincerity. I loved her. I thought she was brilliant. Brian Darcy James, I am a fan of him. He's great. He has a wonderful voice. He was playing Shrek, and because they were doing basically the film but on stage, he had a lot of prosthetics. There was at least one review that said that his performance was very much hindered by the prosthetics. I do agree with this. However, I think he did such a good job with that. And it's one of those things where if the whole design and production is we want to make Shrek look like Shrek, they were gonna need to use prosthetics. And no matter how good an actor you are, that is always going to hinder your performance. And I think it was exacerbated by the fact that Brian Darcy James was acting alongside people who weren't as hindered. Fiona and Donkey and Farquaad. So it's going to look even more obvious that he's not able to do as much with his face as some of the other actors. I think it's kind of like a no-win situation with that. You've just got to make the best of it. And I think he did a really, really good job. You could still feel with Shrek and emote with him and understand what he was going through. So like, excellent job with what he had to work with. That couldn't have been easy. Daniel Beaker as Donkey, he was not a carbon copy of Eddie Murphy, which I really, really enjoyed. It did mean that it took some time to adjust to his performance, because when you know a certain performance so well, like Eddie Murphy's Donkey is iconic, it takes a while to adjust to, oh, you're not saying that quite like how I know it should be said, which is not a thing, but you know what I mean. However, I really liked the slightly fresh take. It felt like he was in the same family as Eddie Murphy, but they were like cousins, not like twin brothers, you know. I really enjoyed it. And again, similar to Sutton Foster, he was able to get the truth through as well, and the sincerity, which was really, really lovely to see. Christopher Sieber, loved him. He was just joyously evil. Again, not a carbon copy of John Lithgow from the film. So charming, a joy to watch. His charisma kind of carried the saggier bits of the plotting and the pacing, which meant that I didn't really notice them on the first watch. Gonna get into that in a second. Really, really great. The ensemble on the whole was good. There were definitely some ensemble members who carried the ensemble a lot more, in my opinion. The ensemble, particularly the fairy tale creatures, is tricky because the whole point of the fairy tale creatures is that they're meant to be these unique, quirky, really standout characters, every single one of them. And also because it's Shrek, it's a comedy, right? So you need comic timing. There were some members of the ensemble who were so good at that. Some of them, I imagine, more seasoned performers were really, really good at that, of being in an ensemble but still being unique and stand out and comedic. And there were some who weren't as good as that, and it really showed, especially with the fairy tale creatures, where we have an idea from the film of all of those characters. You've got the 3 little pigs, you've got the 3 bears, you've got the wolf, you've got the 3 blind mice, and some of the ensemble that were charged with those characters I don't think did them justice, and it's harder when you've got the film to compare it to, which is a shame. I don't say that to be harsh, it's a review. And then lastly, this is not a critique of the musical, this is a critique of the filmed version that is on Netflix. I'm gonna get into this in the spoiler bit as well, because there were bits that were just, yeah. The editing is really weird. The editing in some places just, for me, didn't really work. It felt like they were trying to edit it like a film. And in my opinion, in certain places, what they just ended up doing is making it look like a badly shot amateur film. And you missed all of the great things about the fact that it was a live musical on the stage. It was a very, very weird choice. I don't know if they just wanted it to feel more accessible to people who don't really watch musicals, or if they were trying to hide some of the stage magic, but it was just really weird, and it just in my opinion, it made some bits look a bit naff. A filmed musical is never going to be as good as if you could watch it live, but you can kind of forgive it looking a bit naff because you're like, okay, I know what this would be if I saw it live. You know, I just thought it was a weird choice. So, in conclusion, I think if you do not like Shrek and or you do not like musicals, do not watch Shrek the Musical. Because if you don't like Shrek, like the first film, it is basically the first film, so you won't enjoy the musical. If you don't like musicals, so if you don't like singing and you don't like cheese and you don't like tap dancing, you're not going to enjoy the musical, because those are the things that have been added to make it worth watching. So if that's you, don't watch it, you're fine. However, if you did enjoy the film Shrek and you do like musical theatre, I think there is enough here to justify giving it a watch. It's really fun. It's really well crafted and put together. It's not just like a slap together job. And if you've run out of everything else that you've been watching on Netflix, it's a really fun way to spend 2 hours if you haven't seen it. So I would recommend it if you are a musical theatre fan and you did enjoy Shrek the film. So let's get on to spoilers. And this is going to be spoilers for the film and the musical because they're basically the same. So if you're planning on watching Shrek the Musical, or Shrek if you've never seen it, in which case you must be a tiny baby. If you don't want spoilers, click off. Lovely to have you here, great. Maybe leave a like and a subscribe if you want, but you can leave, it's fine. Cool. If you're here, you want spoilers, let's get into it. Let's start with changes from the original. There are basically no changes from the original. It is beat for beat the original film with songs and stuff added in. The 2 changes that I think are worthy of note is a general change in terms of the use of the ensemble. They use the ensemble, particularly the fairy tale creatures, to add in / heighten the theme of uniqueness and you're special because you are unique and different. I feel like that's kind of touched on in the film, but because in the film we're following specifically Shrek's journey, so it's kind of more like Shrek learning that he doesn't have to be on his own and that he is a special person, and then Fiona learning that beauty is only skin deep, and even if she is an ogre, she is still beautiful. That's more of the main message of the film. With the ensemble and with songs like Freak Flag and This Is Our Story, This Is My Story, I can't remember the exact title of the finale song, but if you know the musical, you know what I'm talking about. Those songs make it more like all of us are unique and we are all special, rather than in this particular story, that's what these 2 characters have learned. It kind of brings like a whole world vision of that theme, if that makes sense. The other change that I think if you know the film you would notice is that Robin Hood is cut. Sadness, that whole sequence, and is replaced by the Pied Piper and some tap dancing rats, which I loved. We'll get into it later. The Robin Hood bit is iconic from the film, so I think if you're waiting to see that realised live on stage, you'll be disappointed. Next is pacing. Pacing on the whole was really, really good. The interval comes about an hour and a bit in, smack bang in the middle, after the song Who I'd Be, which, if you don't know the musical, is the bit in the film where they've rescued Fiona, they've camped out for the night because she's like, I can't go anywhere, we need to camp. And Donkey says, when I first met you, I didn't just think you were a stupid, ugly ogre. That whole scene, they add in this song called Who I'd Be, so it's basically Donkey saying, who would you be if you could be anyone? And Shrek sings what I think is one of the best songs in the musical. I love that song. During that song, I was like, this feels like the end of Act 1, and when I looked it up afterwards, I was like, yeah, that is. So the interval comes exactly where you feel like it should. The first watch through, I didn't feel like there were any kind of massive pacing issues like I did with Death Note. However, on the second watch through, helped by Josh, I did notice some of the places where it feels like they're padding to extend the runtime, because obviously the film is what, like 90 minutes? So it's not a full 2-act musical in terms of the story. So rather than adding story elements, they just massaged some moments, shall we say. Most notably, What's Up Duloc. I mean, I loved it the first watch through, but second watch through, Josh was like, yeah, no, this needs to be over now. And I was like, yeah, this song is longer than it needs to be. Another example is I Think I Got You Beat. Not just the song, but the whole scene around that does go on a little bit longer than that moment needs. Build a Wall, I'm gonna get onto that song in a second, but I feel like that song is basically a filler song. And arguably Morning Person with the tap dance, although for me personally, any excuse to watch Sutton Foster tap dancing is not wasted time. Also, I think Morning Person can get away with it because it's the opening of Act 2. So at the opening of Act 2, you want to have like a big like, whoa, we're back in the musical kind of moment, so it doesn't feel like it's wasting time so much. And it's just really, really fun. Next, music and lyrics. Like I said, really, really enjoyed the music, really, really enjoyed the lyrics. Let's start with music first. There are a lot of different genres, but it doesn't feel disjointed, which is really well done, because it would be so easy to feel like, oh, we're suddenly in a different musical. I think part of that is because where those genres are specifically used. So for example, the kind of big musical theatre Broadway numbers are all kind of in Duloc, which makes sense because Duloc is this kind of artificial, everything's perfect world. That's the whole point. And so having that kind of really highly polished theatrical numbers works really well. The songs that use more band and fretted instruments tend to be the songs with Shrek and Fiona. So for example, Who I'd Be, it's very fretty, guitar-y, folky. I Know It's Today, guitar based. I Think I Got You Beat, even though it's not in a folky style, it is more of those band instruments. You've got electric guitar and bass in there, drums. The fairy tale creatures, they're kind of in between, if that makes sense. So That's a Story of My Life feels a bit more kind of vaudeville-y, and then Freak Flag is like full-on gospel. And then Donkey songs are bringing the soul, which we love. We love Donkey bringing the soul. And then I guess Donkey Pot Pie is just, it's soul-y as well, and that's like Donkey and the Dragon. That's why they have a connection. See, so much thought gone into this. I love it when thought goes into things. What else did I want to say? Oh yes, lyrics. The lyrics, so good, so witty, love them. Some highlights for me lyrically include the list in Don't Let Me Go. If you know that song, there's a bit where Donkey is listing all of the ways he and Shrek go together, and it's like butter and grits, like kibbles and bits, like yin and yang, Sturm and Drang, like, and I can't remember the next bit, but like the whole rhythm of that. And then when he's like the little pajamas that kids have with the, what are they called, feeties, and it's just the excitement. I love it. In I Know It's Today, our prenup will be binding, best lyric in the musical, especially when sung by a teenage girl. Love it. In When Words Fail, there's a lyric Shrek sings where he says stuck in the mud. Now, even though the idea of being stuck in the mud, you could argue is a bit cliche, just the fact that Shrek sings that lyric. Again, there are plenty of cliches that get across that same effect. It's thinking about what would the characters say, which is what I love when lyrics are written well. It's like, what would the characters actually say? And then finally, just the whole of Who I'd Be. I think the imagery in that song is so beautiful. And again, so well thought out. The fact that Shrek says semi-dashing. instead of dashing, the fact that he has a shield within his grip instead of a sword, like he goes for a defensive instead of an offensive weapon. Maybe I'm thinking about it too much, but I just think it's really beautiful. It's a really beautiful song. I just think that whole number is so well crafted. I love it. Now, in terms of the music, I think Build a Wall is by far the weakest song in this whole show. And there are several reasons for this. Firstly, I think it's completely the wrong tempo. This song comes at the point where Fiona has just left with Farquaad. So Shrek obviously thinks Fiona hates him and also thinks Donkey's been in on it. And so in the film, it's the bit where Shrek is shouting at Donkey and he's like, "You're great pals, why don't you follow her home? It's my swamp, me, nobody else." And in the animation, you can see that he's on the verge of tears. It's that thing of like when you're so upset but it comes out as anger and you just lash out at everyone. It's a really heartbreaking moment in the film. What happens in the musical is they have the dialogue almost verbatim. Brian Darcy James is like shouting, he's upset, he's angry, he's like, "Feck off, Donkey, I hate the world." And then he has to go into this rock song that's got such a steady tempo. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4. That kind of tempo, it's not a fast tempo at all. If you watch the show, you can see and feel Brian Darcy James having to fight against his instinct and the momentum he's built up in the scene to go into this steady tempo. It's really, really jarring, and I do not envy Brian Darcy James that. Like, he did the best he could, but you can tell he's fighting against it, which is just bad writing. That's something that should have been picked up in rehearsals or in drafts or whatever, to be like, okay, we clearly need to tweak this because this isn't a natural transition. The second reason this song is weak is that it's in a major key, which is just weird. Music theory 101, major key, happy, minor key, sad. This is a sad point for Shrek. He's not in a happy place. So the fact that this song is unambiguously major, like the opening chords are major, the verse is in a major key, the middle eight goes into a minor, but the majority of the song is major. It just doesn't make any sense to me. So much so that I actually went through to see what the keys of the other songs were. Not like the literal keys, like it's in A or it's in whatever, but like whether they're major or minor. The only song that feels like unambiguously minor is the Ballad of Farquaad, where Farquaad's talking about his daddy issues. All of the other songs in the musical are either major or they're kind of ambiguous. So they might start off minor with the verse but then go into a major chorus like Story of My Life does. Or they're more bluesy, like I Think I Got You beat. So it's kind of like bluesy and weird, but it's not like we're minor and we're sad. And I think if you had a song at this point sung by Shrek, that is what you would need. It feels like they wanted to have a no good deed moment, but they were scared of going all the way because what about the children? Won't we please think of the children? It's a family show, we can't get too dark. I'm not saying they should have gone full no good deed, but if they did go to like a sadder or a more angry, a slightly darker place, right after this you've got Freak Flag, which is like the full-on gospel, be yourself, you're amazing song. So like we wouldn't be in that world that long, and I think the children would have been fine. This is also another reason why I feel like this song potentially is filler, because I think that the moment would be so much stronger if they just did the scene from the film verbatim. That scene in the film is so well written and it gets across that feeling so well. You don't really need a song there at all, which makes me think they put a song in because the show wasn't long enough. And it is a place where, you know, a song when written well is justified. A song is justified there. The song that they wrote makes that moment weaker. And I think if they wanted to have a song there, if Shrek was singing it, it should have felt more like the actual emotional moment that Shrek is in, which it doesn't. Or if they wanted to have like a more major song, have Donkey sing something. Donkey's the kind of optimistic, everything's going okay guy. Write a song for him in a kind of, you know, still thoughtful and pensive, but a major key with him being like, these guys are meant for each other, why can't they get along, why is everything falling apart, but everything will be okay in the end. Things are bad now, but things will be hopeful in the future, and, you know, have Shrek storm off and be like, feck you, dude. I think the song that they have in that moment just weakens the moment in terms of plot and story and character, which is a bit of a shame. So this is a news section specifically for this show, and this is bits that I thought were weird, and this is both things that are in the musical, so just in general, but mostly the way that this filmed version has been filmed, because I have things I need to get off my chest. The first thing that I thought was weird is the way they did the dragon. Now, I don't know how they could have made the dragon better. So this isn't me being like, oh, it was rubbish and they should have done this. In my version of Shrek the Musical, I probably would have wanted to do something like conceptual with the dragon. But in this version of the musical, you couldn't have done something conceptual because nothing else is conceptual. That's the problem that they had. So, you know, you have the big animatronic puppet dragon head with the dead eyes. You have 3 ladies singing the internal thoughts of the dragon, which is fine. I don't know why there's 3, or there's 3 of them because they wanted sick harmonies. And the harmonies are sick, don't get me wrong, but it's a little bit weird. And then you have the rest of the ensemble dressed as her scales to give the idea of like her wrapping around donkey and all of that stuff. It just didn't land for me, and it's not for want of trying an execution. That just wasn't it for me, dog. And you know, it's not so bad that I'm like, it's absolutely terrible, burn it to the ground. It just wasn't for me. But I don't know how else you could have done it. Because if you had like a bigger puppet, so rather than the ladies being the scales, it was like a whole body of a dragon, like that would have had to have been massive to be to scale. There's only so much you can anthropomorphize the puppet. In 3D animation, I mean, if you've seen the film, you know, like she has so much expression in her face. You can't do that with a puppet. So I guess you could have done it with projection, but I also think projection's a bit of a cop-out in a way. I don't know. I think they were kind of in a no-win situation with that one. 10 points for trying and sick harmonies. All right, the next 2 things that I thought were weird were to do with the filming of this. So this is no way an indictment of the show itself, but I need to. Number 1, the way that Fiona's penultimate transformation is filmed. So this is the one where Shrek has crashed the wedding and they're all like, what the hell? You're in love with the princess, lol. And the sun is setting and Fiona's like, I wanted to show you this before, and she like floats in the air and is like, oh my god, she's an ogre, burn the witch. Here's what I think happened in the show, as far as I can tell from what I can actually see from the way they filmed it. We're gonna get into that because that annoyed me. Fiona runs off for some reason, I can't remember why. She runs like fully off stage, and then she backs back up onto stage, followed by the fairy tale creatures. Oh, another thing that was added is the fairy tale creatures decide to rise up and protest to get out of the swamp. Fiona backs up and she's always facing the back from when she comes back on stage, when she backs back up on stage. Now, what I think is probably happening is that is a member of the ensemble in the same dress as Sutton Foster, and she's facing the back so that Sutton Foster can get ogreified up off stage. The scene's going on, blah, 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 blah. Fake Fiona walks towards the altar, and then something happens, which we don't see, and then they get swapped out with ogreified Sutton Foster. Firstly, when fake Fiona is walking back, they add in a shot from kind of this angle. If I'm Fiona, the fake Fiona walking that way, the altar is here. There's a shot from like here so you can see that person's face, and it's Sutton Foster. So they reshot that move with Sutton Foster in the dress, as if to be like, look, it was Sutton Foster the whole time, oh my god. And it's like, come on. See, even the motorbike outside thinks it's BS. Why do you need to do that? Why are you pretending that it's a film and that this was done in 2 seconds flat? We know it's not. It says Shrek the Musical on the title of the thing. People are aware that they are seeing a recording of the Broadway show, so why do you need to do that? Second of all, when it comes to the transformation, if I remember rightly, I think I've blocked it from my memory because of the trauma. She's at the altar, she kind of, this is a new shot from behind her now, so you just see the back of whichever Fiona it is, and she kind of puts her hands up and you have the voiceover of the by night one way, by day another, blah blah blah, the curse. And it kind of like blur dissolves where everything goes out of focus, and then it goes to a new shot and oh my god, she's an ogre. And it's like, No, I want to see what actually happened. I want to see the transformation. I want to see how they did it. I do not know what. No, I've got a sneaking suspicion why. I think the reason they did it is, again, they're trying to make it like a film, and I guess they wanted it to have mass appeal, and they're like, it's gonna look naff if we show the actual transformation, so we'll try and cinemify it. And it's like, no, I want to see what actually happened. So annoying, so annoying. And then the final thing that I thought was weird enough to comment, there were loads of moments that I thought were a bit weird in terms of the filming of it, but the other bit was the escape from the castle. This is one of the things where I feel like they were trying to hide the stagecraft that is happening on stage at the same time as, you know, the actors are doing what they're doing. And I understand that, but the result is it's completely disorientating. You have no idea where Shrek, Fiona and Donkey are in space on stage, because it's just like these close-ups. Like there's a shot from the side, the audience is here, they're here, and the shot's like from this angle, and it's like, but where are they? Like behind them is just the black of the wing, and it's like, what? And what I think is happening, I don't know technical terms for like backstagey things, but basically there's bits of set on rollers, grooves in the floor, that's like the castle set, but I think things are like crossing over to like kind of signify that they're going through different bits of the castle, and then the dragon is like behind a bit as well. So maybe they're bringing the dragon puppets on, or maybe they're bringing the skeletons that chase them and they want to hide that reveal. But they'll be running somewhere and it'll be like a massive close-up on them, like here, but you don't know, are they stage right, are they stage left, where's the dragon at this point? Like you just don't know what's going on. It's just really confusing. And again, I'm not saying it should have been like a wide through the whole thing, but like a wide shot so you know where stuff is would have been helpful. I think they're just trying to make it more cinematic and like, oh, you can't see the practical things. But like, again, we know it's the musical that was on Broadway. I think most people would be fine to be like, oh, so this is how it worked on stage. It was just a really odd choice and I didn't like it. I didn't like it. It made me sad. So after that, let's end with my favorite part, which are the bits that I liked. Special bits that gave me joy. Number one, Sutton Foster tap dancing with the rat feet. I loved it. That whole sequence. I don't like the way it was filmed because it's a tap routine where you're seeing Sutton Foster's torso and it's like, no, we want like a full shot or we want the feet because it's tap. Tap is about the feet. But that whole moment, loved it. Also, at the beginning of Morning Person with the deer, it's just like a really obvious like plastic blow up inflatable deer. And she just like picks it up and swings it around. This is one of the bits I mean about it just doesn't take itself seriously. It's just like, what is, okay, fine. It was great. I loved it. Oh, I really hope that you did click out if you didn't want spoilers and you're planning on watching this. The cow jumped over the moon gag during the travel song. I mean, it's still funny if you know it's coming because both times I was pissing myself laughing. But it's just when you don't know it's coming and you just like see a cow just fly over. And it takes you a split second to realise what they're doing. And it was so good. It was so good. Best bit of the musical. You could just tell there was just someone off stage just throwing a cow. It was so good. It was so good because it was so naff. I think that's the thing. It's just... Alright, I need to compose myself. It was so good. Loved it. The travel song in general, and then the flip reverse when Shrek sings Donkey the travel song where they're trying to go over the bridge, over the lava. I can't remember the exact lyric, but Donkey says something like, oh, we've crossed the bridge. That's a great metaphor. Yeah, love the self-awareness. Sutton Foster going mental in her tower in I Know It's Today, when she's like, just that flip. The way Sutton Foster turns on a dime, it's beautiful to watch. Farquaad's lift. Now, I haven't spoken about the design of how they did Farquaad. Basically, it was a normal-sized person on his knees. His legs were like hidden by a long cloak, dressed in black, and then like fake Farquaad legs attached to his thighs. Now, there is a whole other video potentially, in why they couldn't have hired like someone who was actually Farquaad's height to play that character. That's a whole other video about ableism in theatre. However, they hired a normal sized person playing on their knees. Even though they did like technically hide it, they used the fact that they'd made that choice. So in What's Up Duloc, there's a bit where Farquaad is lifted by two of the other dancers, which is basically just the guy standing up on his actual legs, and like you can see his like shins dressed in black. Just like walking over with his arms out while the guy's holding his arms. It was just really funny. It was like just legit really like a really funny moment, because it was just like, of course they do that. Another Farquaad moment that I liked was the plastic horse, and then like the beeping reverse sound when they like go off stage. I mean, maybe that's a little bit cheap, I don't know. I just really enjoyed it. I just enjoyed the fact that it was like a fake plastic horse. And then the final thing that I really enjoyed was the musical references. There were some really obvious ones, for example the Defying Gravity homage at the end of What's Up Duloc when Farquaad's like, "Wah!" But then also in Story of My Life when Mama Bear's like, "Mama's da-da-da, Mama's da-da-da," and I'm like, yes, gypsy reference, loved it. That not everyone's gonna get. And I think it's little things like that where it's like, not everyone's gonna know gypsy in the audience for Shrek the Musical. Most of them are just coming because of the film. But it's those little touches that show that the creators, you know, they do have an appreciation for musical theatre, and in a musical where they can show that, they are. I just thought that was a really nice touch. I particularly like the gypsy reference one. That was just like, oh. So those were the bits that I really enjoyed about this musical. So in conclusion, Shrek the Musical exceeded my expectations. I really wasn't expecting to enjoy it as much as I did. Is it a perfect musical? No. It should be tightened up, and the only reason it isn't is because it's meant to be a 2-act Broadway musical. Is it the most groundbreaking artistic musical ever? No. Disney theatricals were like, you know, Shrek the film, it's doing great, put it on stage. But I do think a lot of hard work, a lot of craft, a lot of heart is in this show. I also think the show has a really strong message of, you know, be yourself. You don't have to conform. I just think is a really good message for a musical aimed at families. I think is lovely. If you like musicals and you like Shrek and you want to watch something fun, give it a watch. I do wish that in the editing they hadn't been so keen to pretend that it wasn't a filmed version of the musical, but hey ho, that's just how it be. I'm just curious as to who they were editing the musical for, to be honest, because it's weird. But yeah, so that is my review of Shrek the Musical. Have you seen Shrek the Musical on Netflix, or did you see it when it was on stage, either in Broadway or in town? Let me know in the comments what you think of the show. And I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please consider liking and subscribing. Would love to have you on the channel. Stay tuned for more theatre content from a UK perspective, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye, friends!